I've helped found Riverkids project several years ago, and it's grown into a small, thriving local community NGO in Cambodia, working with children and families at risk for trafficking and abuse.
Why did you set up Riverkids?
I had 8 miscarriages in a row within 2 years, so we went straight for adoption. We knew that we wanted to adopt, and at the time, research said that siblings and older children were the hardest to place, and so we should try and adopt an older group of siblings. So we were looking to a regional Asian adoption. We posted to a couple of mailing lists asking about siblings, which countries have more siblings. India is known for siblings, Indonesia, Vietnam has very few siblings available for adoption, for example. And somebody emailed me back from the States and said that she knew of a sibling pair in Cambodia. Was I interested? And she mailed me a photograph. The photo downloaded onto my computer, and I literally fell off my chair crying because I just knew those were going to be my kids. So I rang my husband and said, okay, I found the 2 children. I'm going to Cambodia next month to adopt them. They were at an orphanage purportedly run by an American woman, but I can verify that she bought and sold children in Cambodia for profit. She was claimed they were living in an orphanage. They were actually in an illegal baby home in Phnom Penh where she had stashed them, my daughter as a child nanny, and basically a paid slave, an unpaid slave, sorry. And my son, along with a bunch of other toddlers and babies that she had bought from local families, was marking up and selling off. She initially quoted us 20,000 US for the whole adoption package. I would just have to go to Cambodia for 4 days, pick up the children, passports, paperwork, everything taken care of. We thought, oh my God, so expensive, and asked where exactly the money was going. She said, well, if you're going to do all the paperwork and things yourselves, then it's just $5,000 for the orphanage donation fee. So I went to Cambodia. I met the children at the baby house, not realizing it was a baby house. They were in foster care at that point, which I was paying extra for. Foster care where my daughter was beaten and horribly abused every night, and my son was starved. Eventually, they came into my custody. I organized the paperwork myself. So while I was there, it took about 3-4 months for the adoption to go through. I had learned some Khmer, and while I was out with my daughter and son walking down, we'd gotten the passports, we were preparing to go home, my daughter pointed to a landmark. It was this big floating gambling ship. And she pointed that way and said, my mother, my father, my sisters and brother are there. Can we go and visit them before I leave? I thought they were all dead. Okay. So after an extended conversation with her, the hotel staff helping me translate, when I called her to say, my daughter says that she actually has relatives, what's going on? And what I found out later told my daughter that I was going to throw her away, that she would be killed, that she had to keep her mouth shut or disaster would fall. Went back to Singapore, promising my daughter that we would figure out what had happened. She didn't know where in Phnom Penh exactly she lived. She didn't know almost anything. A dentist told us that she was definitely not 5 years old, that she was closer to 10. So back in Singapore, we tried to get her birth certificate changed to reflect this, no go, the adoption had already gone through. So for the next 6 months, while they adjusted, I kept talking to her about when she felt like it, because she was terrified of talking about it after having all these horror stories told to her by the foster parents and the traffickers. And so we would play with Barbie dolls and those little McDonald's Happy Meal toys. We would act out, you know, what happened the day you were sold, what happened the day your mum went away, what happened with your dad that day, where did your sister go, until we had a sort of timeline constructed and we thought we knew a fairly good story. And we went back in November that year, 6 months later. We were calling around and someone said, well, your kids are Vietnamese, ethnic Vietnamese, born and raised in Cambodia, grandparents are buried in Cambodia, long time. There's a French priest who does some work with the Vietnamese communities. Why don't you call him? So we called the priest and he said, I jogged past a couple of communities that match what your daughter's describing. This is the most likely one. So we thought, let's try. We took the 2 kids down to the riverside, and my daughter pointed to a little girl who was collecting cans by the side and said, I used to play with her when I was little. Maybe she knows where my mom and dad are. And we went over and talked to the little girl. She took my daughter's hand and said, ah! And they were chattering away in Khmer in Vietnamese for a while. And she said, wait here. And she ran off. And so we waited. And about 5 minutes later, this huge crowd, 30, 40, 50 people came up the dirt road running towards us. At the front of it, running, sorry, I still remember her face. So it was my now oldest daughter, who's now 21. She was 11, turning 12 at that point. She's running, racing, and she looked exactly like my younger daughter. And she was just threw herself onto them. So it was just so good to see the two girls hugging. Because we thought we'd never be able to find them.